So on the mooring coils, yeah, let's kind of go through and kind of make the picture um,
Okay, I believe we're live. Welcome everyone. This is a live video broadcast using Google Hangouts on Air. It's being displayed on our website, treefarmer.com, and will be recorded for playback on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Colorado Tree Farmers. This video highlights the 2013 Larimer County Tree Farmers Annual Tour and Picnic. And this year we visited 4 different sites: the Boulder Larimer Community Forest Sort Yard, the Salvation Army High Peak Camp, the Vance Brand Tree Farm, and the Wind River Dude Ranch. The tour was designed to answer the following questions. 1. What do we do with the wooden slash that we're producing through our insect and control and fire mitigation efforts? Where have all the beetles in Larimer County gone? How long will it take the forest to recover from the devastating wildfires we've been experiencing recently? We videoed the all-day event earlier and want to discuss the highlights today. So Colorado State Forest Service Forester Mike Hughes and Boulder County Forest Health Utilization Specialist Scott Golden, who led the tour, are joining us today to talk about the event. So let's get started. I'll play a little of the event video, then we'll pause and ask Mike and Scott to discuss it, and then we'll follow that up with some more parts of the video. Here we go.
Overview of the sort yard here and how it came about and everything.
Absolutely, but I'm going to back up a little bit and then somebody from the state can chime in. You are going to have to go to Boulder County, all of you, because the Colorado State Forest Service Forestry Fair is September 14th. This is going to be a really good one, and we're going to host it at our Ridge Road Sort Yard. It's a perfect venue for this. We can park a ton of people. We have a bunch of crappy looking forests to get into. And not only will we have some vendors there with equipment, there'll be a lot of education. We're going to have some fun stuff there. We're also really going to hone in on private landowners being able to get work done on their property. So we're going to have all kinds of ropes, pulleys, kind of taking the theme of log like an ancient Egyptian. It's amazing what you can get done on your property with a rope and a block. So all that demo setup will be there. So that's September 14th. It's a Saturday. It is the opening day of muzzleloading season for those of you that would pull the tag. So there are going to be some hard decisions to make. But that being said, the Wood Miser rep is dropping the first day of muzzleloading season with his dad, so he can come out and show you some pretty cool stuff as well. So welcome. This is what we refer to as our Meeker Park Community Forestry Sort Yard. This entire program Boulder County started along with Larimer County and a couple of other counties. We started in 2007 with some efforts towards trying to get some folks, specifically a certain demographic like we have here in Meeker Park. This is a snowbird community, which a lot of you folks know of. So everybody has a couple acres. They need to do some D-space work. They're not too keen on burning slash piles. We keep on trying to get people to burn slash, but they needed some place to take stuff. So rather than having your typical community slash pile that has been the norm for a decade, years, try to up that a little bit and get some utilization out of what came in. It's 17 acres right here is what we have. Technically it is in Larimer County, but again the line is on the south boundary right there. So it's worked out really, really well, and let us be able to fine-tune this just as we'd like. So we pretty much accept anything except duff, needles, because we can't put that through the burner. We don't want to grind that. Junk in it. The site is always manned. That's key for these type of sites. Otherwise, it ends up being a transfer station, and you find things like indoor, outdoor carpet, engine blocks, that kind of stuff. Stuff that's really detrimental to grinders. We keep our sort yards open basically from April until about November. Pressure people love it. They want to see more of it, and as long as they're funding it, they're the ones paying the bill. We'll pretty much help them out as much as we can. So as we started out, we really wanted to try and get value. I mean, there's a lot of lodgepole pine, post and poles. Some people still buy post and poles, shavings wood, but it's really hard to get dimensional material to spec in the back of a Subaru Outback. I have some pictures that would amaze you of what people bring in here. So we've kind of fine-tuned a little bit. We still want to try and find a use for everything that comes out here. That said, Slash right now is an absolute money sink. That is why we decided to get an air curtain burner when we were first looking at opening these yards, and I ran the numbers, and for the amount of volume we were getting at that time, this thing made sense. We purchased it from Air Curtain Burners out of Florida, get about a 98% reduction from it. All of the ash, Dan's taken some of it, but the ash pile was over there, and there was a little bit over here. It's kind of like our biomass plant. The amount of ash, 2 30-yard roll-off containers takes care of an entire season up here. So we get great waste reduction with that. Still would like to see it go to someplace though, composting or such. So we're actually making some moves back into grinding where this will probably get traded in, or chipper will probably get traded in, and we'll go to some grinding capability. What I really want to see is just for the stuff to augment the cost of going off the hill right now. As the loggers here and Carl and transportation biz and the secondary processing know, number one, the more you handle it, the more money you lose, and number two, the transportation is an absolute killer. So that being said, we're working on that aspect of it. The wood, because of the Subaru Outback log trucks that come in here, and it all being 2-4 foot wood, we grind it and use it for fuel in our biomass plant. We last year just got our Boulder County jail is biomass fired, biomass and solar, and with the demands they also have domestic hot water. So unlike where my office is in Longmont, we heat about 100,000 square feet, but where it's just heat, at the jail it's also heat and all of the domestic hot water, and I never really gave it much thought before just how much hot water a prison or a jail uses, but with all the showers, the dishes, the cleaning, the heating, it's pretty phenomenal for even a jail that's that small. And they have the capability where they will run that year round. So any of this solid material now, I always want to find a higher value. I'd love to find a way to make it pay. But right now it pays to get it off the hill to our boiler plant for the transportation, not the processing. That's something we still eat. But natural gas prices jack back up again. That'll all change.
So this is chips that you send down there?
Usually whole tree chips, but we start playing around with ground material too. There are definitely some tweaking that you need to do with ground material, which we can get into a little bit later. But for the oddball size material, you really need to go to a grinder. You know, chippers are great at long linear material, i.e. snip a tree, throw the tree through the grinder, or through the chipper. But when you start getting all this oddball firewood size stuff, there's really no effective way to feed that through a chipper in any kind of volume. So that's why we're looking at grinders.
And the biomass you're burning those
it's in chip or ground form. Correct. As opposed to where we'll be going here in just a minute, and that's what's a cordwood boiler, right?
Right.
Whereas actually firewood that they're throwing in there, but much smaller scale. Yeah. I mean, between the two biomass plants right now, we're heating about 175, 190,000 square feet, and then domestic hot water for about 70,000 square feet.
Covenant Heights, which is just a few landowners up the road here, they have one of those outdoor cordwood boilers. Kind of like what we saw when we went up Whale Rock a few years ago. Carl Weeder has one, and Chuck Hansen has one. One of those ones that you put outside your building. You feed it at the beginning of the day, and for the entire day, pretty much, it'll just burn and radiant heat your home. So that's a little bit different type that we'll see at High Peak Camp.
Basically, with biomass plants, the bigger the plant, the worse fuel, the less quality fuel you can put in it. It's like in Mark's old stomping grounds up in Minnesota. St. Paul Heating District, they use about 70 semi-loads a day of the nastiest stuff you could possibly imagine that goes off the back end. That thing's huge. It heats the downtown district of St. Paul. Idaho, and I don't know, but also their campus biomass plants, same thing. And they sprinkle, do that in front of me, certain chemicals. Last time I was up there in the spring, and certain chemicals. Well, this cuts down on slag. I'm like, what's the chemical? And he's like, don't worry about it. I can't tell that to state air quality.
South Shore
Don't worry
Lake
about it.
Superior, they take about 100 and some loads a day in there.
Yeah.
And you go back and you log and process everything that you're logging and processing, logs, pulp, and everything else, paper, and then you go back and everything that's left goes through the grinder, and they run the power plant on it.
So for those of you who were at our last meeting, you know, we had Dan Bin talk about the use of wood and the use of biomass and those sorts of things, and how, you know, the idea sounds great. It's you know, it's just a nice kind of feel-good idea. But if you don't match what you're trying to do with what you have,
Guaranteed to fail.
Okay, in that clip you heard Scott talk about the fair coming up. Scott, have you got any more information on that you can give us?
Awesome. Don't let the rain dissuade you. I was just up there today. It's great surface conditions. Rain, snow, or shine, it's going to happen. We have quite the collection of vendors. I saw the operations demo that Zach, our forestry operations guy, is putting together. It's pretty stellar. Again, the whole rope, blocks, and some ingenuity in an ATV, and you can pretty much move anything on your woodlot. Air forwarding trailers, tractors with farmy type skidding winches on them, portable winches, iron horses. Bobcat of the Rockies is going to be there with their entire lineup. Vermeer is going to be there with their entire lineup. And Vermeer, of course, Vermeer chippers. Bobcat of the Rockies is now the Moorbark dealer, and then Global Machinery will also be there with their lineup, and they're the Bandit dealer. So we'll have three different chipper manufacturers there as well, with chippers that are sized specifically for the private landowner or the small D-space contractor. If you want to take this, we're going to have a lot of booths like the Southern Rockies Alliance for Forestry. The SAF is going to be there. A lot of education, and we have barbecue for lunch, so it can't be bad.
Very good. Let's go on to the next section of the video and see what happens.
So anyway, we're always looking at ways to try and use this product, get somewhat creative. We definitely want to push the local markets. You have to go for the low-hanging fruit. I'll throw out biochar as an example. These guys have been puttering around with this for years and beating their heads, and they're trying to get farmers to use biochar, Why does a farmer want to use biochar when it's a lot less expensive and easier to take an ammonia tank out there? So it builds, so you can say it for all the right reasons, but the reality is it has to come down and make economic sense.
Well, I'll tell you why they're using compost right now. It's a whole lot cheaper than chemicals, and their crops are just exploding for production.
Yeah, I know we're shipping quite a bit out there now. Our Western is starting to. They're good. And then just the whole manure. Nobody owns a manure spreader anymore. Turning back the clock to being able to spread like organic stuff on your fields. They can turn valves, but yeah, just a good old-fashioned manure spreader. That's the right kind of size. But go back to biochar. They were trying to really push to get biochar in the agriculture market. Well, in that conversation, what's a much higher value? And I know Carl's already figured this out because this is a good chunk of what renewable does. We have all kinds, especially in this county, into the south of us, mine reclamation going on, all these tailings piles. All of a sudden you're getting into super fun site type stuff. And all of a sudden that biochar that was worth pennies, F that, is worth a lot more. So all of a sudden they crack that market, and they're selling everything and they can't make it fast enough. Yeah. So always go, you want to say the low-hanging fruit, but you always want to go for the highest value. And that's how they're probably going to be able to make that work. Now it's just getting the supply, like Mark alluded. We actually are getting some markets come back, and the days of being able to just do nothing but bring in these nice lodgepole saw logs and chew them up and turn them into something else. They're going to have a greater purpose, or they're going to get chewed up and turned into something that has a lot higher value. Did he find the ash pile yet? Not yet, by looking at his backside. He'll find it.
You've had background entertainment the whole time.
You're sliding around.
does everybody know what an air curtain burner is?
Let's walk over more to the center here.
No, we don't.
Okay.
Well, you soon will.
You soon will.
You load it like you normally would, just building a fire, and then the engine on this end drives a big squirrel cage fan. very high velocity. It goes along the length of the air curtain burner, and then the discharge ports are on the inside that go over the top. So that is where the term air curtain comes. So forced air drives air over the top, but just before it gets to the other side, it hits the opposing wall and it gets then driven down to the bottom. So you hyper-oxygenate that fire. This thing's platinum white hot when we're burning. Once it's cranked up and burning appropriately with the right kind of feed rate, there is no smoke, just a lot of heat. Throughput on it, not anything close to a grinder, but again, we don't have to haul anything off. So this was the big cost savings for us. But our program, since we purchased this in 2008, started running, it's grown by about 5 times. So again, just even from the utilization standpoint, 2 guys working this, one basically feeding the burner and the other one shoveling material around pretty much constantly. Depending on how much we get, won't even quite keep up, and we'll put thousands and thousands of tons through this thing.
All right, I just cut that off because I'd like you to talk a little bit more about the sort yards. Were we in the most active sort yard? And how many sort yards have we got? Scott, maybe you can handle that one.
Yeah, so Boulder County, we have 2 sort yards. The one in Meeker Park, where the video was shot, and then the one in Netherland at Ridge Road, which is where the forestry fair is going to be. So that strategically pretty much puts us on the peak-to-peak corridor on the south end of the county, excuse me, and on the north end of the county. The one on the north end of the county, the Meeker Park yard, where the YouTube video was shot, we somewhat share with Larimer County. We have a lot of constituents that come in from the Estes Park area, pretty much from Big Thompson south, utilize that yard. So I guess you could call that a combination Larimer County, Boulder County yard as well. As far as what's going on in Larimer County further to the north right now, I'm not sure. Mike could speak to that.
Currently, there are no sort yards in Larimer County other than the one that the county shares with Scott in Boulder. The county sort yard that had been tried in Stove Prairie was not continued this summer due to lack of utilization or lack of use. As you guys know, the main reason for that is that sort yard did not take slash, only took certain size material, and because of that, I feel it just wasn't used. Another reason is, and I've mentioned this a few times, Scott and Boulder County have really put forth a big effort toward their sort yards. In all honesty, in Larimer County, they have not done the same. There's been no champion like Scott on Larimer County's side of things, and they're just both in terms of funding or dollars and personnel, there just hasn't been the backing in Larimer County as there's been in Boulder County. We are going to try to rectify that up here. Not that I'll go too much into it, Wes, but we are going to try to resurrect a sort yard that will take slash and all size materials, and that will eventually be shredded for use as biochar.
Okay, that's good news. Let's go ahead and move on to the next section of the video and see what we have to talk about.
This is Vance's property. There's a brass cap right over here that I'll point to, which separates. This is 160 acres.
That's right. Nice.
So if it's 160 acres, Ray, what's this length right here?
Quarter of a mile. No, half a mile.
Half a mile. It's a half a mile by half a mile. We're right there. There's a brass cap, and I'll show it to you when we walk by it. Dave, right at the base of that T-post, you'll see it. Other side.
Ribbon still tied to it?
Other side. Yeah. Okay. So Ray had Mark come up and put in these 3 patch cuts.
Yep.
1978,
78 or 79.
1993 or 94. I came on the district in 91.
Oh, no.
I came on the district in 91.
Absolutely not.
I will bet my youngest son.
Oh no.
That's how confident I am.
I'll bet I could use a kid to play with here. We need some help.
I'm telling you. Anyway.
93?
No way.
Yes.
That was the brat?
How did I remember that he broke the post then? If it happened in 90, if in 79,
You remember a lot of things,
Let's do the story.
All right, so where we're going to go, we're going to walk along here and see some work that Tony has done, just most recently. But we're also going to cross the creek here, this little creek right here, and just walk into the edge of this cut. And I want to show you what has happened over the last 20 years as far as planting and reforesting these areas to something beyond just lodgepole pine. Vance's objective was that he wanted something more than just the lodgepole pine to come back in to these patch cuts that come through here. We have thinned this. We've come along with both loppers and chainsaws to thin out the lodgepole a bit, because again, the Brand family does want more than just lodgepole pine. So this spruce you see here was one that we planted. Now, we probably planted this spruce 12 years ago, but just slow and steady. Slow and steady. This white fir, I don't know when we planted it, but you can see it's had some top damage. But you see some larger white firs down there that we've planted. Here's a limber pine. Let me first say, guys, that Ray Mahaffey did send me an apologetic email on Monday.
That's terrific.
The 2 days after the picnic, with a very sincere apology that he checked his records. Now, I don't know what records he keeps, but he checked his records and he found out that I was right. So
That's wonderful, because I was going to volunteer to cut out that part about you offering your youngest son is a gambling stake there, but it looks like it's all going to come out well for you. So that's great. Well, Mike, talk a little bit about what Brand is doing then, particularly about the diversity. That sounds like a wonderful thing that we all ought to be working on.
Well, Wes, he had those 3 patch clear cuts put in. The total acreage was around 10 acres or so amongst the 3 cuts, and it did come back very well with natural regeneration with lodgepole pine. But as in other areas, when you do a treatment like that, it's going to come back pretty much just in lodgepole pine. You'll get some individual fir or spruce here and there, but 98% of the natural regeneration that'll come back after a treatment like that's going to be lodgepole pine.
Okay, can somebody talk about the pine beetle? We've heard a lot less about the pine beetle than we had in previous years, and it's been a big problem.
I'll go ahead and start, Wes. I'll say what I said at the picnic, that I think there are a few reasons why we're seeing less mountain pine beetle now than we did, say, 3-4 years ago. One is all epidemics run in cycles. No epidemic runs for multiple decades, at least forest insect epidemics. And we've been in this epidemic for, the better part of 10 years, and it's we're just toward the end of the cycle, and downturn. Why is that? There could be a variety of reasons. I think, though, a couple other things have come into play. One, when it came over the hill, when it came over the divide, it came into a different ecotone. What I mean by that is, yes, we have a lot of lodgepole pine over here in Larimer County, but we also have more variety of species, ages, and sizes than in those valleys that were hard hit in Grand County, Summit County, Jackson County, and those sorts of things. So because of that diversity, because of that variety, I think that the beetle just hasn't been as successful. Another thing is, mountain pine beetle will kill different kinds of pine in Colorado. It seems to be most successful in the thin-barked lodgepole pine. When it starts to hit ponderosa, which is a thicker bark species, I just don't think it is as successful in that type of pine. So I think that's another reason that we've seen a decline in beetle. Lots of people have thought that, well, it's got to be weather related, because isn't that the only thing that really stops the beetle when we have, you know, frigid temperatures for weeks on end in the winter? Isn't that the only thing that's going to kill off the beetle? I don't say that that's wrong, but I think that's only one way that you might curtail a mountain pine beetle epidemic. I think there are other issues that can come into play.
Scott, you got anything to add to that?
No, it's real quizzical, but it does boil down to what Mike just said, is all epidemics, at least insect epidemics, are cyclical. So really quite no rhyme or reason. You know, we saw a lot of species over here. Limber pine specifically was hit really hard. It's another thin bark species. And I guess what really, the questions I have is that it was going so full bore from 0 to 60. And in the Stove Prairie area particularly, even after the fire, these unburned islands where we really didn't even have much surface fire that had a lot of beetle population in them, those collapsed as well. So who knows? But what we do know is, since we've been practicing forestry in North America, we've had bark beetle epidemics across species. There'll be another one. Things that haven't changed are forest density and a lot of the forest health issues that we have to get go. So I would put a positive spin on it and say, get it while the getting's good right now, and decide which trees you want to take out of your forest instead of the mountain pine beetle in another few years when the next epidemic comes around.
Yep.
Good enough. Good enough. Let's see if we can finish up this next segment of the picnic video.
Everybody, a most recent issue of what used to be the Tree Farmer magazine, which is now called Woodland. And there's an article in there on page 10 that's called Super Fires. This is an article, and I think, Mark, you even used that word, super fires, earlier this morning, about our most recent wildfires. Well, the forest land fires over the last few years, and how they've just become larger and more destructive and that sort of thing. So anyway, I was able to get, 30 or 40 copies, so I thought, well, I'll bring up a bunch up today. So anyway, this magazine, though, has changed. As I mentioned, it is no longer called Tree Farmer Magazine, and they're trying to go to a broader audience, where even if you're not a tree farmer, even if you're just a forest landowner, a recreational forest landowner who really doesn't do much in the way of management or such, the articles and such and the features that are in here would still be something for those landowners. So the last thing, though, is that they do charge everybody a subscription fee to it now. Used to be that some folks, particularly if they were in their first year, they got a year subscription, or there were some other groups where at least they would give a discount. But now everybody pays $16 a year if they want, and I believe it's just 4 issues. But anyway, still, I think a good magazine. And then some other stickers. Corey, I just saw you and it just reminded me what I didn't do as part of this article. You know, Wes is there. That's there. All right, I'm going to flip to the next page. All right, there's somebody right there. But then there's Corey's wife's book. Linda Masterson wrote Surviving Wildfires. Great book. But it's also featured in this article too. So anyway, do you have this magazine yet?
No, I want to pick that up.
Thank you. And I got more. So if Linda wants more,
She might.
so anyway, go down and take a look at the boiler. But I did want to thank a few people for helping me out today. Tony already left, but I did want to thank Scott a lot for helping me out today. Thanks, Scott, for doing that. And I've got little gifts, and they're very little, but I think kind of. This is a little D-tape.
Oh, look at that.
A Tree Farm
With the
logo
Tree
on
Farm
it.
logo.
But it's a little logger tape. D-tape on one side, just regular tape on the other. So anyway,
Thank you very much.
here you are. Thank you. But I also wanted to thank Boyd, Peggy, and Dave for helping me out with, just the logistics, bringing the vans up, helping set up for lunch, helping shuttle us all and all that. I really wanted to say thanks to you guys for helping me out and doing that. That's really great.
Okay, let's go on to the last question that our tour was supposed to answer, and that is, how long will it take for our forest to recover from the recent wildfire activity that we've had? I know all of us have looked at parts of our forest that are already starting to recover. They seem to be green and growing like crazy, but Mike Lester, our Colorado State Forester, was just down at the Hayman fire recently, and he mentioned that there are sections down there that after 10 years still look as barren and as they did after the fire just went through. So, Mike Hughes, what's the story? What can we expect to see?
Wes and Scott, one of the main questions that I've been asked over the last year is, when will we have our next forest? When will the forest become a forest again, particularly like in the High Park area? And, the answer isn't an easy answer. And in reality, the answer is not the kind of answer that people want to hear. I say that there will be a seedling size forest within 5 to 10 years, but realizing that's going to be a very small forest with trees only knee high. If the more direct question is, or specific question is, when will we have a mature forest again? The real answer is not in our lifetime. These forests that burned, the forests that burned there at High Park, Waldo Canyon, and in other areas, were forests that took centuries to establish. In other words, the trees that are on your property, Wes, or even your property, Scott, you guys know that the mature trees are over 100 years old, or were over 100 years old. So it's going to take that long again to get a tree that's 30, 40, 50 feet tall. Things just grow slow in our area. It's an educational opportunity, I think, for us as resource managers, as landowners, to tell folks that these forests are going to recover, and they're going to recover on Mother Nature's time scale or timeline, which doesn't coincide with our timeline most of the time. her timeline is, again, measured a lot of times in terms of centuries, and in the very least ours in terms of days and years. But anyway, that's the cold reality, that many of these forests will not become mature again. The ones that were devastated, the ones where entire hillsides were killed, will not return to a mature forest for 80 to 100, 120 years.
Okay. Scott, somehow most of us think of Boulder County as being just a little bit different than the rest of the world. Can you tell me from your perspective what's going to happen down in your neck of the woods?
I don't know necessarily counteract, probably just support what Mike has said and add a couple of things. You know, first being, what's the human perspective? What's a forest? Okay, are we talking about mature forest? Because in my mindset and what we're starting to realize is the forest never quit being a forest. Okay, right from the standpoint from when it was standing green trees to when the fire came through to minutes after a crown fire or stand replacement fire or surface fire went through, it was still always a forest. It's just that folks need to come to the realization that every single forest cover type that we have in the Rocky Mountain region depends on disturbance to thrive. Forests aren't static. So to me personally, it's absolutely fascinating, and some people may think this warped, but I feel fortunate to be able to witness some of this. That said, this isn't apples to apples. High Park is a perfect example of that. You know, Wes, on our properties up on Mount Ethel, the upper part of Mount Ethel, and that pure lodgepole, where I don't know about you, but even on my management plan, I had no intention of scrambling around up on Volkswagen-sized boulders on a 50-60% slope to do forest management. That's the best possible thing that could happen to that hillside. And now it's coming back in aspen. It's just like it always has. But that's because that forest cover type of upper montane, that lodgepole, Mex conifer, huge aspen component, is used to having fire that comes through in a stand replacement or a severe fire type regime. In other words, high intensity, low frequency. All of the plant life, that particular type of forest is adapted to that. You then compare that to the oranges, which would be, say, further down Risk Canyon, lower montane, foothills ecotone, pure pondo. That is a forest that normally saw high frequency, low intensity type fire. And now we can debate climate change, but the reality is things are getting a little warmer. And transition with the ebb and flow, climate change has always been happening. The only question in my mind now is what is exacerbating what we have going on now. But that being said, we're getting warmer. We may actually see areas, those lower areas, convert more to a shrubland or what we refer to a woodland, with woodland being a scattering of trees, scattering of ponderosa, and a lot of mountain mahogany, bitter brush, currant, that type of stuff coming in. Instead, that it really wouldn't support a fully stocked forest. And in essence, you know, folks want to see the whole, you know, all the sea of green coming back. I would argue that we probably really don't need to see a sea of green. We need that mosaic. We need things broken up a little bit. So in short, it never quit being a forest. There's some areas, especially from an infrastructure standpoint and erosion issues, that we definitely have to address. But I'd ask people to keep it somewhat in context. The best thing they can do is not ask this question after the fire. It's kind of like I just alluded to with mountain pine beetle. Go out there and pick your disturbance. Every single forest cover type needs disturbance that we live in. So decide how you'd like to basically introduce that disturbance to your forest. Just let it grow thick and wait for the next stand replacement fire and start planting a lot of trees, or get out there with your saw and have some quality time on the weekends.
That is wonderful, guys. You've both done a wonderful job of commenting on the picnic and giving us some extra material to boot. And so I think we're going to stop it here. I was going to go a little farther, but I don't think you can top what you've already said. So I'm going to stop unless one or both of you have any closing comments that you'd like to make. What about it? Anybody got anything to say before we quit?
Bring your rain gear, a hot cup of coffee, and show up at the forestry fair at 291 Ridge Road, Nederland, Colorado on Saturday. I've been involved in a lot of demos over the last 12, 13 years, and this by far is going to be the best one.
Okay?
Wes,
Mike?
Wes, I just wanted to say this is a nice setup. What you've done here, how this has all been set up, this is great. Being able to see you and Scott the way I am, and the way you've just set this up, this is really great. So.
Mike, I agree. Hangouts like this could be an effective tool for all sorts of purposes, including perhaps our state committee meetings. And they're free. All we have to do is learn how to use them. So let's stop here. I just want everyone to know you can improve the health and sustainability of your forest, and we can help. We're your neighbors. We're just down the road behind the green and white signs. We're Colorado tree farmers. Join us, and together we can make a difference. Thanks for watching.